and abuse. This blood is for you.
The content presented in this broadcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Invest wisely. The views expressed on this show are those of the guest and do not necessarily represent this station or its sponsors. You've worked hard for a lifetime to save and to maximize your investments in retirement. But are your investments consistent with what you believe? And why does it matter? If you believe that all of life is meant to honor God, stay with us. This is Faith and Retirement with Jay Peroni, sponsored by Faith Investor Services, LLC.
There are roughly 2,000 Bible verses that mention money, and Jesus' teachings are filled with references to possessions. And your money matters. How you manage your money matters to God. And that's why we're here. Welcome to Faith and Retirement with Jay Peroni. Jay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Tom. How about you?
Doing great. It's so good to be here. Wow, there's a lot in the news today. And so I was just looking forward to unpacking a little bit of this with you. The big news, of course, over the past few days has been the withdrawal of President Biden from the upcoming presidential election. And does that change anything for Americans, Christian families? Does this change your approach in strategizing people's portfolios?
Well, obviously, Tom, there was a huge change here politically with current President Joe Biden giving in to the increasing calls for him to step aside in favor of a more energetic candidate. He announced on Sunday he was no longer going to seek re-election. And then he endorsed Kamala Harris as his replacement. And really, Tom, what's interesting about this is she's had such big turnover in her staff since she became vice president. In other words, she's not very popular, even with her staff, and she's not the most dynamic campaigner. And I should also add that Harris does not poll very well against Trump. So it's going to be interesting to see what the superdelegates at the Democratic National Convention do if they vote for her or not. But big picture, the Trump rally has been in effect. We'll talk about that here in a second, but it really doesn't change anything big picture. The momentum was building for former President Trump. We're still bullish over the markets regardless of who is in the White House, but it does make it more likely, in my opinion, that Trump will be the next president. The Trump trade, as I mentioned, has been in full swing now since the poor debate by Biden. And a lot of people are asking, hey, what's the Trump trade? Well, that refers to what a victory at the polls in November by former President Donald Trump would mean for the U.S. economy, for stock prices, individual industries, and companies. And a lot of people are kind of forecasting a Trump presidency. We already know what he looked like, what he did, a lot of the important macro and market implications, a lot of it revolving around trade policy, tariffs, his plan to impose universal tariffs on U.S. imports. They're going to benefit a lot of the companies that do business here in the United States. America First is a lot of his big message, as opposed to the global players. So there's a lot of things that are in motion right now. But at the end of the day, I always say to people, it's very hard to predict what will happen, especially 100 days away from an election, right? What investors often think will happen doesn't. And let me give you a few examples. When Obama was talking about Obamacare, everybody was saying once it's implemented, all the healthcare companies would collapse, and lo and behold, Obamacare came. Whether you love or hate it, it didn't collapse healthcare companies. Then again, people thought when Trump was running in 2016 that his presidency would collapse the financial markets, and obviously that didn't happen. So what investors often think is going to happen doesn't actually happen. There are still amazing opportunities in this market. We've got a really good team at Faith Investor Services. We're focused on the assumption that there will be some potential tax cuts, some lower interest rates could be coming, but we also believe in smaller and mid-sized companies, regardless of who is in the White House. But certainly, if Trump is there, we're going to see a lot of takeoff in those smaller companies. And that's really what we've been focused on: stocks, certain industries, sectors, and amazing opportunities. We believe in getting the big picture first right, and then we can look at the little details, who becomes president and what that looks like once we know the details.
Very good. You know, I sent you something earlier today that said since 1976, this is the first election where there hasn't been a Clinton or a Bush or an Obama
That we know of, right?
Yeah.
The Democratic National Convention is still a few weeks away, so we'll see. But at the moment, it doesn't look like that.
That's right, 1976, and the candidate who won there is still alive, Jimmy Carter, who's 99 years old.
Wow.
Amazing. Hey, let's just take a moment out to talk a little bit about screening and cleaning people's investments. How do you go about doing that, and what's your free offer attached to that?
Yeah, so, we talk about the big picture a lot on this show, but God cares not only about the big things, but the little things. And we certainly need to look at what we're supporting. I've seen a huge momentum. People, really taking a step back and saying, hey, this is not me. This is not my values. They've boycotted Bud Light, Target, companies that are opposing Christian values. Tractor Supply recently was, kind of off their woke bandwagon once people stood up. So I always say you've got to put your money where your values and your faith are. You've got to put that in motion. And that's why we offer the Screen and Clean program. I invite folks, a lot of our listeners. I'm a very busy man, but I set aside time each week to talk to our listeners to help them be wiser stewards of what God has entrusted to them, help them glorify Christ in their investments. And we screen their portfolios in a biblical fashion, looking at what they're supporting and looking at cleaner alternatives. We don't want to be supporting abortion, pornography, embryonic stem cell research. A lot of these things we can avoid if we know about it. What are we supporting with our investment dollars? That's what I help people understand.
Very good. And you can pick up the phone and call Jay with your questions. Maybe your family is facing something specific and unique to you. Well, pick up the phone and call Jay. In fact, that number gets answered here on the weekends. 800-270-7310. 800-270-7310. And the website is faithandretirement.com. And the other offer is to get your free book, 7 Ways to Make Sure That Your Money Lines Up With Your Faith, by fiduciary and CFP Jay Peroni. Get your free download right now at the website faithandretirement.com. Jay, some analysts have pointed to what they say is a shift in the market. Specifically, I was reading in the Wall Street Journal an article by Karen Langley, and she talks about how the market's laggards have sprung to life in recent days, which the seemingly impervious Magnificent Seven group of tech stocks, meanwhile, has stumbled. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the Magnificent Seven, first of all, refers to the tech giants. You've got Microsoft, Apple, NVIDIA, you've got Google, which is Alphabet, Amazon, Meta Platforms, which is Facebook, and Tesla. And for the past 2 years, these 7 companies have been driving most of the stock market returns. But if we look at the last month or so, the S&P 500, which is 500 companies, and these 7 companies have the largest voice because the S&P 500 is market cap weighted. So if you've got a bigger company, you have a bigger representation of the S&P 500. So over the last month, the S&P is up 1.9%, while the equally weighted S&P 500, if you give each of those 500 companies an equal voice rather than the big 7 having a huge voice, the equally weighted is up 2.7. So it's beating the S&P over the last month. And even more astonishing is the fact that small cap stocks, companies that have a small market cap, are up 10%, nearly 5 times what the S&P has done. And this is showing a really important thing, which there's breadth, meaning wider participation in the market, more advancers than decliners. And this is a healthy sign for the markets. The market leaders, that top 7, if you can picture it, it's kind of like the generals in a war, right? They can only drive the market so far. You need the soldiers to do a lot of the heavy lifting over time to have a healthy market. And that's what we're starting to see, is finally a lot of these smaller companies, which certainly will do better typically in a Trump administration. That's why you're seeing a lot of it. Also, rates coming down, that's very favorable for smaller companies and mid-sized companies because they have a lot of debt servicing, and lower interest means that they have more money that they can pour into their company and reinvest and so forth.
We're helping you build investment strategies that God can bless. And if you're wondering what on earth biblically responsible investing is all about, you come to the right place. In Proverbs 14, it says that we need to study to show ourselves approved, that there is a way that seems right unto man, but its way leads unto death. So we need to be careful about how we live and how we invest. So Jay, artificial intelligence, AI, continues to be a big financial headline, and it affects media and all other kinds of industries as well. Do you see this trend as a fad, or does it have a trend that has got some legs and some long-term appeal.
Yeah, I watch, Tom, a lot of economic trends and business issues, and that's really my job as a financial professional, is helping my clients to really sort through the noise. And the rapid rise of artificial intelligence over the past year has been certainly remarkable. It's not new to me. I've been using AI for helping me to manage portfolios for going on about 7 or 8 years. It really helps me do what would require a whole team of analysts to be able to pour through all of the financial data. But if we look at what's going on here, the fast-paced decision-making in the U.S. tech industry, it really is like a tsunami. It's really building this huge wave because at some point it could wreck our economy. If you think about it, AI makes our lives easier, but there are hidden costs. Like the tech innovations could allow businesses to do more with less. Think about Amazon.com, for example, right? Mm-hmm. They're one of the largest private employers in the United States. They have over 1.5 million people. They're also one of the largest investors in AI. And a lot of people don't know right now, but they've already got 30% of their workforce is robots, self-driving vans, delivery drones, automated processes. Robots don't sleep, don't take vacations, they never need a break. So you can see where this trend is going. It could put many hardworking Americans suddenly out of a job. So there's some dangers to AI, but there's also a lot of benefits. It's really enhancing data. It's helping us to really speed up and create new technologies and really make things more efficient. So you've got to balance the two. The good news for the United States is we are seeing a lot of innovation here in the United States compared to Europe and other parts of the world. Just real quickly here, we're seeing this growing very quickly. The 40% of the S&P 500, their revenues are generated outside of the U.S., so it's spreading not only here in the United States, but all across the world. And we think that artificial intelligence is here to stay for quite some time. It's developing quickly, and it should expand over the next several decades.
Thank you, Jay. We're talking to Jay Peroni, and we're only halfway through. We've got some great ideas and things for you to consider. Do you want to screen and clean your investments with no charge, no obligation? Well, that's our offer today to you, and you can download your free book, 7 Ways to Make Sure That Your Money Lines Up With Your Faith by Jay Peroni. Go to the website, faithandretirement.com, or give Jay a call at 800-270-7310 to take advantage of those 2 free offers. We're going to be back with more with Jay right after this.
Many times, people are shocked when they get a closer look at what's hiding in their investment portfolio. Hi, I'm Jay Peroni, host of Faith and Retirement here on Family Talk. As Christians, you and I should know the condition of our flocks and whether the companies we're investing in are using our money to fund the abortion and pornography industries or even sex trafficking. So I'm offering to screen your investments today absolutely free to see if you're investing in a way that lines up with your faith and values. Your investments really can honor God without sacrificing performance and returns. Learn more about us online at faithandretirement.com and screen your investments today. That's faithandretirement.com.
Don't miss Faith in Retirement with Jay Peroni, CFP and Senior Portfolio Manager of Faith Investor Services. Saturday afternoons at 1:30 Eastern, Sunday afternoons at 3, sponsored by Faith Investor Services.
This is Faith and Retirement with Jay Peroni. Now, you don't have to choose between investment performance and biblical stewardship of your family investments. Learn more now at faithandretirement.com or call 800-270-7310. Online at faithandretirement.com.
Your family finances, your pocketbook are in the spotlight today, and this is Faith in Retirement with my good friend, CFP Jay Peroni. You know, when you engage someone like Jay, the research does show, if you have a CFP, if you have a fiduciary, that, the end result is a lot better than if you are a do-it-yourselfer. We can talk more about that in depth in a future show. Also, Jay, in a recent show, you mentioned that some of the current economic trends kind of look similar to the dot-com bubble of 1997 to March 2000. Then the NASDAQ rose 800%. What are the similarities and the differences?
Yeah, so during the dot-com bubble and burst, you had a great new frontier with the World Wide Web, right? There was a ton of speculation. It was crazy. Everything with a .com on the end was exploding higher. And I remember a client of mine, a good friend of mine, she was a good client, and she was a dividend stock investor. So she liked blue chip, stable companies that she could look at and know that, they weren't going anywhere. And all of a sudden, you had hundreds of companies just soaring because they were expected to be the next best thing. And she called me and said, Jay, should I get into the internet? And I said, no, this is not appropriate for you. You're just you want stability, and you're not going to get that. And that's what we saw during the .com bubble, was you had hundreds of companies just coming up out of nowhere and just getting these outrageous valuations. Now, today we're seeing a lot with artificial intelligence. That's really what's been driving the markets since last November. And I still expect fireworks before this bull market is over. We're still in the late innings, but I believe there's more time, because usually during a great bull market, you see at least 100% return minimum. You mentioned 800 during the tech bubble. Right now, we haven't even gotten to 100% since last November. It's up maybe 50, 60%. So there's a lot more room for this market to grow, but we are starting to see a lot of the same speculation in artificial intelligence. The bigger difference is there's fewer companies. Rather than hundreds, you've got 7 major companies. Then you've got maybe 30 or 40 kind of players that are doing storage and other parts of artificial intelligence. But it has a huge, huge barrier to entry. That's different from .com. You could, in the .com age, you could just create a website and you're off and running. But nowadays, you have to have billions of dollars to be able to drive AI, store it, compute it. And we're starting to see a lot of those same signs here in this market. The other crazy thing with this market is, for just the 11th time since 1987, we saw the bullish sentiment in the American Association of Individual Investors exceed 50%, while also the bullish sentiment in the Investors Intelligence Survey top 60%. That's only happened 11 times since 1987. And usually the good news is, well, I'll give you the good news first. The market usually doesn't correct over the next year much during that, when we see that type of bullish sentiment where people are expecting stocks to go up. The bad news is we tend to see muted returns. They tend not to be as good as the 10 to 12% that we typically see in the markets. You might get 7 or 8%. That's historically what's happened. So we are seeing a lot of enthusiasm for equities. It's a great time to review your portfolio. Make sure you're in the right places, because these are the last innings of this bull market, in my opinion.
We talk a lot about the need for people to grow their retirement savings. Obviously, the program is Faith in Retirement, and you've done a lot to help our family accomplish that. Thank you for that, by the way. There's more to the story, though. I've been hearing that people often mismanage how they withdraw the money, how they take the money back out when they need it. Any thoughts about that process, and are there ways that you could help?
Yeah, I always call it's kind of like an orchestra. If you're a music fan, there's different parts. There's the strings, and you've got the percussion, and you've got different parts of an orchestra. And that's really what a financial plan is, like a collection of different instruments that each create their own unique sound. And the same can be said for your retirement strategy, where a lot of people are great at savings. They've got their 401k, their IRAs, their Roths, their save. But the problem becomes when they stop working. And they've got to maximize the effectiveness of the retirement strategy, because there really are 4 main threats, Tom, at the end of the day. And I've been doing this for almost 3 decades, and they say the same thing. Jay, I don't want to run out of money. I'm worried about a life-changing market drawdown. So how do we protect you from that? That's the first goal. The second thing is, how do we keep up with inflation? And we've seen that the last 3 years. Inflation's been running 6-7% per year. Food and energy prices going through the roof. How do you manage that in retirement? Also, how do you minimize taxes? We have a lot of strategies for our Faith Investor Services clients where we look at tax minimization, not avoidance, that'll get you in jail, but we look to minimize taxes so that people are paying less in taxes. Should we convert to a Roth? How do we do some tax loss harvesting? How do we make sure you're not paying too much taxes in retirement? And then lastly, what if there's some sort of life-changing event where you need advanced medical care, maybe in-home care, maybe you need to go to assisted living or to a facility? That can wipe a family out. So by creating a solid roadmap, a biblically based financial plan, we're going to tackle all 4 of these areas. Make sure you don't run out of money, make sure you keep up with inflation, don't pay too much in taxes, and we have a plan. Not always insurance, but we have a plan if you need long-term care assistance. That's really what we do and what we specialize in, helping Christian investors make sure their money's in the right places and we've got it protected.
Good financial stewardship is a lot more than just picking a few good stocks, as you're hearing on today's episode of Faith and Retirement. And Jay Peroni, somebody who I've known for a long time. He's very credible. He's very accessible to you. He's somebody you can pick up the phone and talk to. And that accessibility is rare these days. His telephone number is 800-270-7310. If you're interested in this process and want to screen and clean your investments, you want to find out how it works, just call the number, 800-270-7310. Jay, we touched on some of these, but what's the biggest mistake that our listeners are making with their retirement dollars?
I would say the biggest overall mistake is really a failure to get wise counsel, and Proverbs 15:22 is pretty clear on this. Without counsel, plans fail. With many advisors, they succeed. And we try to help our clients succeed through getting wise counsel. And you can look to James, and James 1:5, he sought wisdom from the Lord. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. So we seek God. We seek his wisdom. We seek sound financial strategies for our clients. But often I see good, hard, Christ-honoring folks try to navigate their finances on their own. And it breaks my heart because they often come to me after years and years of mistakes, and sometimes I can fix it, but oftentimes there's too much that's been done in certain choices that have been made that I can't undo them, like managing Social Security. We've got a lot of decisions there. What about managing medical costs? The average person retiring at 65 might need as much as $315,000 to cover healthcare expenses in their retirement, even with Medicare and so forth. A lot of people also make mistakes not understanding longevity. The average person could live to 90 or even 100, and they didn't have the prospects or the planning to make sure they covered 20 or 30 years in retirement. They didn't manage withdrawals appropriately. They got bad advice. They didn't manage taxes. And then they took on costs like college, where they borrowed money and provided financial aid for their students and their kids and grandkids, but you can't borrow for your retirement, right? So again, it's just having a solid game plan heading into retirement and preparing that prior to retirement. The 5 to 10 years prior to retirement, we call it the retirement red zone. That's a critical time to make sure you've got all your ducks in a row.
We've just got a couple of minutes here. Very quickly, so in Acts 20:35, Paul quotes Jesus in saying that it's more blessed to give than to receive. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we try to help our Christian families have more so they can give more. And think about this. If you had $100,000, Tom, and you invested it for 20 years, you got a good return, 7-8% for 20 years, it grew to close to $500,000 just saving, not putting anything in, just doing a good job with managing it for 20 years. It grew to about $500,000. However, if you could get an extra 4% in gains per year over that 20 years, it nearly doubles to nearly $1 million just by getting an extra 4% per year. So that's what we try to do. Think of all that extra giving over a 20-year period if you get better returns. I'm not promising better returns by any stretch of the imagination, but we do a lot of holistic planning and helping our clients to not only have good assets, but have good charitable giving strategy, things like donor-advised funds where they can get some tax advantages, looking at their estate and legacy plan, making sure it lines up with their biblical values, that they're passing these values to their kids, not just assets, but wisdom with that wealth. And that's really what we help families with, is getting better returns, being strategically positioned, and giving more to the kingdom of God.
I wish we could continue unpacking this, but unfortunately our time is over. Thank you so much, Jay. If you want to reach out to Jay and you want to discover what biblically responsible investing could mean for your family, pick up the phone and call 800-270-7310. 800-270-7310. Again, the website is faithandretirement.com. Thank you, and may God bless you richly in this coming week.
Thanks for listening to Faith and Retirement with Jay Peroni. Do your family investments match what you believe? Call us now for your free portfolio screen, 800-270-7310. You can know that your investments line up with your faith and values. There's no obligation. Call and ask your questions, 800-270-7310. And call us today for a free retirement analyzer, a $750 value for clients with $250,000 or more. To get your free ebook from Jay, visit faithandretirement.com. That's faithandretirement.com. Investors should consider the investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses carefully before investing. For a prospectus or summary prospectus with this and other information about the funds can be found online, KOCG or PRAY. Read the prospectus or summary prospectus carefully before investing. Investing in ETFs involves risk, and there is no guarantee the fund's investment strategy will be successful, and you can lose money on your investment in the fund. Shares may trade at a premium or discount to their NAV in the secondary market. The fund is new and has limited operating history to judge. Faith and Retirement is sponsored by Faith Investor Services, LLC. Learn more now at faithandretirement.com or call 800-270-7310. Online at faithandretirement.com. Tell a friend about this outreach. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.